Good evening, everyone. I think we're all ready to kick off our meeting tonight. So we'll start off with our roll call. Mary Fossey.
Here.
Chris Gray.
Present.
Jim Langus.
Present.
Ethel McNeil.
Present.
John Monroe.
Present.
Kari Quas.
Present.
Simone Tarver, present. Ben Young.
Present.
Julius Wilson.
Present.
Perfect. And so looking at the materials that Nicole sent us, it looks like we have two meetings, minutes to approve. So it looks like June 1st and June 22nd. I move to approve the meetings as they are in our packet.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
If anyone opposed? Perfect. So we'll approve the the minutes as they are. Our next one will be staff comments. I'll turn it over to Nicole.
I just want to acknowledge that we received a good amount of public comment written in, and I want to just say that I do not plan to read those out loud for the community or for you guys. They've all been delivered to your inboxes, and so at I think agenda item 3 today, we'll discuss how to move forward with that and solidify a process moving forward. So there seemed to be a little bit of misunderstanding from the community as to how it was going to work today. So I just kind of wanted to acknowledge that and say that, and that's all I have.
Perfect. And to piggyback off Nicole, thank you to everyone in the community that did give us all that good comment. I read through it as Nicole sent it over and then reread it in our packets. And, it's a lot of good information to think about as we're kind of moving our process forward. So we'll move on to item number 1, map review and presentation. So I'll turn it over to Tony.
Hello, I hope everyone is well. Let me share my screen. Hopefully everyone is looking at the slide presentation. Let me know if you cannot see it. I have a couple of items, a couple categories to go over. One is the proposed final document or final draft document, and the other is a description of Plan A, some details. We're moving, as I've said, probably each time over the last 4 or 5 months, from general to more detailed. So it may get a little hairy at times with information that's provided, but that's it is what it is. And let me first explain the proposed final draft document. What we should produce is a report of some type. This is the beginnings of the report. It's nowhere in the completion stage, but it's just the beginnings. Right now, it essentially has sort of the characteristics of the districts and some background. But this is the beginning. We don't want to wait till the end to begin to produce this type of report. There will be an associated presentation because it's understandable and much more understandable to have a presentation that summarizes all that. So there'll be 2 different sort of documents, if you will, or products. One is a report and the other is a presentation. The second part of this is basically a slide that discusses a little more detailed about that plan A8 that we want to propose for the final draft. And so first, as I just discussed, that proposed final draft report basically expands into a final report. It's going to include background and description of the plan process. We need to let people understand the process that we went through to get to the final configuration. It's going to include characteristics of the district. Right now, that report that I sent only really discussed district statistics and maps and a little bit of the rationale, slightly amount of the rationale. it also should include the rationale for district configuration. And so this is what led us to form the districts the way they finally ended up. And so again, right now in that report is very little. I included the beginnings of that in this slide presentation.
Tony,
yes.
this is John Monroe. Do you think it would be of value to, in the document, to talk about the 5 requirements that we are required to satisfy?
Are you speaking of the
RCWs?
The document? Yeah, it does. It has those. In the beginning, it talks about the legal criteria that we're under. And one is the Washington Constitution, other is the voting rights, which is a segment that includes that. And the other is the districting criteria for the city. So included that are those criteria. I don't know if you saw that first part.
Well, I obviously missed it, so I'll need to go back and review it again.
Yeah, that's it's right in the beginning, and you'll see the RCWs listed there. It's about a page and a half. Okay, but the answer is yes. So you're right. You're right on that should be included. The slides I'm going to go over I'm going to quickly go over district statistics because there's a lot of statistics there. If you have any questions, feel free to contact Ms. Weber and email me on specifics. There's just too many to actually go over each line item. But I want to cover those in a broad brush, if you will. And then we'll go into each of the district descriptions. We may not be able to finish. We'll just have to see. We may have to split this up between this meeting and next meeting. Hopefully we can finish this time because we're moving toward the August sort of kickoff, if you will, of presenting this to the public. And so Plan 8, we've seen it before. You saw it the last time, and we discussed some aspects of it, but I'm going to go over a little more detailed aspects of it. I thought I'd level set everyone just to make sure everyone understands terminology and what these statistics mean. So I thought I'd just briefly talk about, total population, of course, is the overall total number of individuals that exist inside the district. And we use the 2010 population to equally populate the districts, and that's due to court cases that said you cannot use sample population. You have to use what's called 100% count. And the last time that occurred was 2010. So that's why we use 2010 to equally populate the districts. However, you can use other attributes, if you will, demographic, socioeconomic attributes to help describe the districts and help describe, comparing the districts with one another. Voting age population is those above the age of 18, as you know, and that's 2010 as well in this particular case. The next slide shows you citizens voting age population. This is the first time you've seen this. And so what this does is this provides you with the number in percentage of individuals who are citizens who are above 18. And so many times the significance of this is that many times you have areas where there's undocumented persons. This provides you with a more accurate percentage and number of the individuals who actually can vote or at least can register and vote. And so as you'll see here, this percentage number for district number 4 is 33%. Whereas if you look down to the 2020 estimates, it's 56.93%. Now, these are two different time frames. And so let me first say that this uses what's called the American Community Survey. It's a 5-year survey, and there is no single date for this. That's why they call it the 2014 to 2018. It's surveyed over 5 years. So it's not a particular date. But we can feel sure that the actual sort of date that this would reflect is somewhere in between here, somewhere in between 2014 and 28. Many times, or sometimes people use the midpoint, which will be 26. The Census Bureau dissuades people from doing that, but in order to get some tangible year, 26 can be thought of as somewhere around the date that you can associate that with. The next one is, as I said, that ESRI 2020 population. ESRI projects that, and let me just say that ESRI, the Census Bureau tested, or not tested, did a contest of several vendors. ESRI came out number one in accuracy to what they, the data that the Census Bureau provided. So ESRI's, fairly well known. It's probably the largest GIS company in the world. As we see, there is a majority minority district in total population, as estimated by the 2020 ESRI enrichment services, and that's what I use to actually get this. They recently updated the last 2 or 3 weeks from the 2019, and so I used the latest data to actually update this, and this is the 2020. So approximately, this is what the data is. So when it comes out, hopefully it's close to that particular amount.
Tony, I looked at page 8, which had this data. It was a new stat graphic that you had provided us. And I know that we can't rely on information that probably is based on the redistricting guidelines that John mentioned and the 2010 census, which we have to use. When I looked at these estimates that you provided us, I know we have to follow the census, the 2010. I also recognize that the 2020 census, which has not been completed yet, is going to impact the work that we're doing today. And you included this document, and you could, and I suspect you want us to think about this one, but you can see from the estimates on page 8 what is most likely going to happen in Silver Lake without the census, and on estimates that are being made today. Some of you have mentioned other projects that are being built around the city. Somebody mentioned East Marine View Drive and the Kmart site, and we know about the riverfront, the townhouse project, and all of those. Those will show up at some point, and those are just a few. But the Silver Lake information, it makes a difference, because when you look at Silver Lake, which already has a standard deviation of 4.2. And I know that we can't use this study. This is the ESRI. But when you look at it, and it has a standard deviation of 4.2, fast forward in just a short while, that deviation is probably going to be much, much higher. You might have 1,700 more voters there than the average of when you take the average of all of these populations and divide it by 5 and add it on to Silver Lake at 4.2. Silver Lake is really going to have a much larger standard deviation. It probably will be above 5, or could be. Does that mean anything? It's more of a question as to whether we should consider anything to do with Silver Lake.
Right. And we briefly talked about this before, and my recommendation was to let's get the districts configured the way we think they should be configured. Then make a decision whether they should be modified, and hopefully we're not talking about a great deal of modification here, a precinct here or there, if you will, to possibly ensure that maybe you don't have to do another redistricting in 2020. But that's not the sole purpose. That's not the purpose. Is to get this correct right now using the 2010 data. And then at the end, potentially, let's look at that. And so I look at that as a secondary somewhat of a secondary goal, if you will. If you all decide or deem that that's critically important, we can stop, at this particular moment and modify according to the growth. And all of this is estimated growth. I mean, we're not, the growth that you saw, and I can show you the growth for each district, by the way, and so I can bring that up. Each district has a different, percentage of growth, and I can bring that up. I didn't include it in here.
I'm not
But yeah,
Tony, I wasn't suggesting that we do anything, but you included this in the packet. And so I just took for granted that you must have thought it was relevant. That's the only reason to bring it up, or otherwise you wouldn't have included it. But I'm not suggesting that we do anything at this point. I just wanted to call our attention to this.
right. And what I included wasn't the growth. It was what the percentages are at this particular moment. And so, these are the percentages of the specific race and ethnicity groups, major race and ethnicity groups, to give us an idea of where we truly stand right now in total population. That really was the purpose of that. It really wasn't to draw attention to the growth. It was more to give you an idea of the race and ethnic makeup of these districts. Although I see you could actually go to this population for 2020, calculate the growth using this previous slide right here, and get the growth and the percentage of growth. You could do that. That wasn't really what I was shooting for with this particular slide. But I hear your concern. My recommendation is let's get it right. I think maybe that should be a discussion point if we deem so, whether we want to actually massage this plan and project, if you will, where districts would grow in population. I think that's something that could be on the table. That is up to you all, but I think let's get this plan right now and then make a decision how we massage it, or whether we massage it, let's say. All right. The last one, second to the last, let's say, for the district statistics, if you will, was the 2018-2019 registered voters. And so this was obtained from, the elections, Sonoma's elections website, integrated and processed into the data. And so we have the turnout for each of the districts and for 2018 and 2019 and the relevant votes that occurred. I thought I put in a compactness measure, and notice the note down at the bottom, which is, although it's not an exact comparison, I looked at the Washington State legislative districts, and all of these districts fit within the minimum and maximum amounts for the compactness, the same 3 compactness ratios that I ran. So they fit in between or greater than the minimum and less than the maximum, if you will. And so they fit right in there. And I didn't really need to do that, but because these look, just have a little experience, these compactness measurement ratios look fine. So there really isn't a problem with that. You see that District 5 at 0.20, that seems a little low, but it's not when you look at the configuration of the Silver Lake District. It's by no fault of its own. It's irregularly shaped down there because of the boundaries of the city itself. Nothing nefarious going on. But the neighborhoods, most of the neighborhood splits are due to the precincts that split neighborhoods. And so that's not a concern as well, because the precincts do split neighborhoods. And so they're most likely, in many cases, the neighbors are going to have to be split. So again, that's not a concern. Socioeconomic, I'm not going to go through all of these aspects. but this just gives you an idea of those major socioeconomic indicators that I provided in the beginning. First for 2019, I'm going to redo those for the neighborhoods for 2020. I haven't done that yet. But for the districts, these are those attributes for each of the districts. Now, what I thought I'd do was to present to you all each of the districts in a zoomed down fashion and discuss each one, just so everyone will have an idea, and then discuss a rationale. And you'll see what I mean by rationale for the district configuration. And so this is District 1. We can see that, and I'll talk a little bit about this later. Bayside is split, Riverside is split. It's a northern district. I wanted to point out, and I'm going to discuss this in a minute. We can go back and forth. I thought I'd produce a map so we could see the census blocks that are included in each of these areas, each of the precincts and each of the neighborhoods. And I wanted to point out a couple of things. One, this area right here, which we had to split, or we had to grab this irregularly shaped precinct. We split, has 0 population. So this is the one that we split between Riverside. And so that's included in Riverside, but it had to be included in District 2. If we wanted to include that, we'd have to include this precinct that exists right here. And so that was split. This area down here, last week, I think, or last month, I might have said that there was 0. It's actually 7. You can see there's 7 people in 2 blocks, 3 here and 4 here. And this precinct right here extends all the way to the east. Once again, that's one that had to be split. It either had to go into one of these districts or because of the nature of it being split by the neighborhoods. And so we put it in District 1. And so just to talk specifically about District 1, it's a northern-based district. The core area was Northwest Everett and Delta, or Northwest Everett or Delta. And so I bring that up because there's nothing to stop us from calling it either Northwest or Delta. All right, so we could call it one or the other. We don't have to say Northwest Everett / Delta. The neighborhoods of Delta, Bayside, Northwest Everett, Port Gardner, Riverside. Largest populated neighborhood is Delta. The 2 neighborhoods, Northwest and Delta, are wholly contained. A portion of Riverside that contains 0 population that I showed you is cut off from the district. Port Gardner section only contains 7 persons. Bayside remains split without precinct 18. And so that's this precinct right here. And so that was split, which allows the downtown area to exist in District 2. We'll talk a little bit about that. The district includes the diverse population of Delta. That is a third of persons speaking another language, over 42%. And it's over 42% minority. This is 2020 estimate, and all of these are 2020 estimates. The district is also characterized by containing the city's colleges and older housing structures, excluding Delta, which has newer neighborhoods, and that's due mostly, in my opinion, to higher percentage of newer rental units. And District 1 has the lowest estimated population growth, 2010 to 2020 out of the districts. It's only 6.85% growth. Now, the rationale for district configuration, and so what I did was I went back and thought through what did we do? How did we come to this district configuration? And so District 1 configuration started with determining whether Northwest Everett and Delta should exist in the same district as the core areas. And so Delta and Northwest was combined after the analysis showed relatively small turnout differences between combining Delta with Northwest Everett configuration in a district that adjoins the south areas of district, meaning that we'd have to create a district that goes down south, and it'd have to go down south really to the Lowell area and encompass that particular area. The analysis showed that it was some difference, but not a significant amount of difference between the turnout of that district and the turnout of the district that it would encompass Northwest Everett. And just to make a point, because I noticed there were comments, we can't just look at the turnout percentage of Delta versus Northwest Everett. You have to look at Delta in the combined district that it's going to be in versus Delta in the combined district with Northwest Everett. And so the two has to be included, or Delta has to be included in a particular district in order for you to truly analyze what's going on. The next decision was to split mostly Bayside or Riverside. And so Bayside was split along Precinct 18, which allowed for most of downtown to be included in District 2. And so we'll see that in a map or a picture of District 2. And Precinct 18 was a good demarcation point since it appears to match socioeconomically with the northern precincts of Port Gardner. Precinct 17, which is that one in Riverside, was added to contain most of Riverside. So only a small portion of Riverside is left that should read District 1, or District 2, that is correct. So only a small portion of Riverside was left in District 2, that's that zero population, small block. And Precinct 17, this is the one that I was referring to, also splits Port Gardner with 7 persons left contained within District 1. So only 7 people are in District 1. The other population of Port Gardner exists in District 2. And so District 2, these are the highlights. Precinct 18 is included in District 2. So that's up at the top. Most of downtown is in District 2. So it starts right around this area. So most of the downtown area is encompassed there. Most of Port Gardner is encompassed in District 2. Remember, that's 7 persons basically in here. So all of the other population is in District 2. South Forest Park is mostly contained within District 2. Right down here, except for a small part, and we'll talk about that. And then Pinehurst Beverly Park is split with District 5. And so just to show the splits, basically, and I'll talk a little more about this. So South Forest includes everything in District 2 except for these blocks right down here. These blocks, which amount to 341 persons, are included in District 3. Once again, because of the precinct splits the neighborhoods. And so what we have is Pinehurst Beverly Park is also split right here with District 5 down there, segmenting the two. I'll get to talking a little bit about that too. And so District 2 encompasses the central to eastern portion of the city. In the core area district, we decided is Lowell, the neighborhoods Bayside, Glacier View, Lowell, Pinehurst, Beverly Park, Port Gardner, South Forest Park, and then Valley View. It extends from the upper downtown area of Bayside, and that's at Precinct 18, diagonally down southeast central portion of the city that includes Lowell and Valley View. And so just to let you know, so we're talking about this downtown area that diagonally comes all the way down to Lowell, and then Valley View down here, all of the sort of pinkish area is what I'm referring to.
Is there any reason why, could we have called this, the district as Lowell/Port Gardner, like we did on District 1 with 2 basic neighborhoods?
We could do that. And the only reason why we wouldn't do that is, and we can call it whatever we want, but the core area is an area that remains over multiple redistricting cycles. That's the concept of it. And so to have Port Gardner and Lowell, we'd have to make a decision that that's what I think you want to occur. And I'm not saying don't do it, but we could do that. You would want that Port Gardner and Lowell to remain intact over multiple redistricting cycles. And so that would be the effects of actually making it sort of a core, a district core. So we could do that if we want, but recognize that normally, if we're going to change it, then that may mean that we're changing the core, and therefore we're looking at Port Gardner and Lowell as being the core. And so the next cycle, we're looking at most likely trying to keep that intact. Once again, we can do that. It's nothing wrong with doing that, but just recognize the implication or ramifications of doing so.
Well, the only reason I bring it up is if you look geographically, they are significantly different districts geographically. Housing, age of housing, those set of demographics that you showed us, and just knowing the area, what Port Gardner kind of looks like, and the schools that are there and everything, versus what it looks like in what the territory, the land, the geographics look like in Lowell. I just wonder if we'd be better off to have the two names there.
I will leave that up to the commissioners. You can put that on the table. I think that there is nothing wrong with doing that. The only implication or ramifications is once you do that, then usually they would be tied together for the next redistricting plan.
Sure. It's true.
So I don't, that is solely up to the commissioners.
Tony, if you would scroll up to that area in Riverside that stays in District 1, that sliver there, can you put your arrow on it where it says Highway 5?
Let me see if I can, I have to, in order to zoom in, I can.
That arrow, yeah.
You're there.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Is the reason you didn't just round that off to make it look more composite, as one area, and is that because of precincts, that it isn't part of district, that
Yes.
isn't District 2? Is it
Yes.
precinct? Okay, because someone's going to have to explain that. Okay, thank you.
Yes. And you're right. I think that's something that should be stated up front, is that the decision was made to not split precincts, and therefore neighborhood split precincts are two separate things. And
Right.
so what we're doing is we're grabbing an entire precinct, and sometimes it cuts right through a neighborhood. And so in this particular case, that's exactly what happens right there. Yep.
Tony, this is Chris. Another
Yes.
quick question. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no problem.
I guess I wasn't conceiving of these core areas in quite the way that you mentioned them. I thought they were sort of a part of the process to get us to this. Is there any sort of legal ramifications? You mentioned ramifications. Is it really just customary, or would the next cycle be sort of more locked in than I might have thought?
Right. Now, being the first one, the first plan, there's probably no legal ramifications, but district cores are one of the things that the court looks at, meaning that it usually in the context is if a redistricting cycle after redistricting cycle, you've kept a neighborhood or you kept a city or whatever inside a plan, they draw questions of why did you now remove that? And so there has to be some compelling reason now to be removed. And so since this is the first one, it's probably not. Again, it all depends on how a court views this, but there isn't a track record, let's say. But what I always say is don't do anything that raises any red flags. That's always, my philosophy. And so stick with the things that don't raise red flags.
Right.
But potentially this would be something that would raise a red flag. Why do it? So if you're not, if you all do not want these district cores, and that's a different thing. Um, uh, I would not revisit all of them. It certainly would not. But if, for example, you wanted to use Port Gardner instead of Lowell, that potentially that makes sense. That's the case excuse me, that's the case I saw. The problem is that most of these, except for District 4, wholly contains the district, the neighborhood that's the core. And so we'd have to make that, I would think, the wholly contained within District 2, if you will. District 4 uses the casino, Westmont rather, expanded from Casino Road. And there's only 5 people that's left out. That's somewhat insignificant on mine, from my point of view. But I can see a rationale for adding that precinct to make District 4 or make Westmont whole as well. And so the concept is that you pick the cores, and those cores would be those areas that would be somewhat consistent from redistricting cycle to redistricting cycle.
Makes sense. Thank you. I guess based on that, I'd prefer a little more flexibility than tying them together strongly.
Right. 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 And so the largest populated neighborhood is, I think I left over, did I? Yeah, the largest populated neighborhood is Port Gardner. And so that's why I think that would be only considered, excluding those 7 persons. The 3 neighborhoods, Glacier View, Lowell, and Valley View, are wholly contained. The district neighborhoods also include similar median household age, centers around sort of the mid 60s. I think it's 1966 is it. The district has the second highest estimated population growth from 2010 to 2020, which is 12.74%. And the largest number of business, because that downtown area, I'm sure, has an enormous amount of businesses. The rationale for district configuration, once again, going back and figured out how we got here. District 2 configuration began with establishing Lowell as a core area. Bayside was split along Precinct 18, which allows for most of that downtown area to be included in District 2. And it appears that Precinct 18 matches socioeconomically with the northwest precincts of Port Gardner. And you can, view this on those maps that I produced at the precinct level, where you can now go into a little more detail looking at matching precincts with precincts. Precinct 17 was removed to contain most of Riverside in District 1. Remember that. Only a small portion of Riverside was left in District 2, which is that 0 population. Since Precinct 17 was also splits Port Gardner, 7 persons in Port Gardner were left within District 1, as I mentioned before. Next, there was a determination on whether to include South Forest Park within District 2 or District 3. And so we went, of course, back and forth and looked at that. And socioeconomically, South Forest Park could really match either District 2 or District 3. So to a certain extent, it was a coin toss. And in order for District 3 to exist within the acceptable population deviations, Evergreen and South Forest Park could not be both wholly contained within District 3. And so we found that out. And so thus, what we did, most of South Forest Park was placed in District 2, except only that small segment of South Forest Park remains in District 3, and that's due to Precinct 33 splitting the neighborhood. And so we had that small amount that actually has 341 people that exist in District 3. And I'll talk a little more once again about that in District 3. And so District 3, the highlights, a small portion is contained of South Forest Park is contained within District 3, 341 persons in that area, and all of the other neighborhoods are wholly contained. So District 3 was easy once we determined what to do with South Forest Park. And so District 3 encompasses a portion of western and the coastal areas of the city. The neighborhoods, Boulevard Bluff, Evergreen, Harborview, Seahurst, Glen Haven, South Forest Park, and View Ridge, Madison were the neighborhoods. The core area for the district includes Boulevard Bluff, Harborview, Seahurst, Glen Haven, and View Ridge, Madison, those three that were on the coast. The largest populated neighborhood is View Ridge, Madison. Four of the neighborhoods, Boulevard Bluff, Evergreen, Harborview, Seahurst, Glen Haven, View Ridge, Madison, are wholly contained. And so South Forest Park is the only one. It's split to include a small portion, those 341 persons within the district. And the District 3 is characterized by its coastal western boundaries, as well as moderately newer housing structures, 1978 as the median housing average, and the highest median household income out of all the districts, 83,492. And the district also had the second lowest population growth from 2010 to 2020. Of course, that's using the ESRI 2020 and the census 2010. That was 7.34% growth. The rationale for district configuration, the District 3 configuration began when we, with wholly containing the district core areas of Boulevard Bluff, Harborview, Seahurst, Glen Haven, and View Ridge, Madison neighborhoods. Once it was determined that South Forest Park mostly exists inside District 2, Evergreen could remain wholly contained within District 3. And so only a small portion of South Forest Park would exist in District 3 due to Precinct 33 splitting the neighborhoods of South Forest Park and View Ridge, Madison. Also, the industrial areas around Boeing could remain mostly intact above the Boeing Freeway and included in District 3. The other portion below the Boeing Freeway would be contained inside District 4, which gets us to District 4. And so a small portion of Westmont is not included here, the highlights, and you'll hear this again. And then portions of Cascade View and Twin Creeks also contained within District 4. And so District 4 encompasses the southwestern portion of the city. The core area for the district is Casino Road within Westmont. The neighborhoods, Cascade View, Holly, Twin Creeks, and Westmont. The entire district exists below the Boeing Freeway, so that's a demarcation, somewhat of a natural boundary, if you will, natural infrastructure. The largest populated neighborhood is Westmont. One neighborhood, Holly, is wholly contained. Westmont is also almost wholly contained. It does not contain a small portion. That's a census block with 5 people. That's in Precinct 42, I believe. The district is characterized by its diverse population, higher than average percentage of people, higher than average of people that speak another language in addition to English, 41.45%, and newer housing structures, 1988, the median average, and higher renter percentage, 69.15% than any of the other districts, so it has the highest renter percentage. Using 2019 estimates, the district also contains the only majority-minority neighborhood in the city, and that was Westmont. That may change when I look at 2020. Holly may also be majority-minority. Who knows? Just have to check and find out. The rationale for the district configuration began with the core area of Casino Road. Since it was not, it's not conventional redistricting practice to just follow only a road. The neighborhood of Westmont was a starting point for the district. So Casino Road is the core area, but we should start with something more than just a road. Only a single census block, as I mentioned before, Westmont, remains not included in the district with 5 persons. This block exists in precinct 42, which splits Westmont and Cascade View. There was some discussion of included that, and that could be on the table at a later date as we introduce this to the public. Since the neighborhood of Holly had similar socioeconomic and demographic attributes, and it's geographically intertwined with Westmont, it was added to District 3. It was just logical to do so. Precinct 47 and Precinct 95 were added to wholly contain Holly within District 4. They also have similar socioeconomic attributes that match District 4. And so these precincts are also split by Cascade View in Twin Creeks neighborhood. And so finally, we have District 5, the last district, and of course that is down at the south. We can see that Pinehurst Beverly Park is split, and I'll get to all of the neighborhoods and attributes. So the highlights is that Pinehurst Beverly Park is split between District 5 and District 2. Precincts 34, 37, and 39 are added to District 5, and I'll get to that why. Evergreen was not split to add to District 5, and we discussed that. I'll get to that as well. And so characteristics and highlights, this encompasses, District 5 encompasses the southeastern portion of the city, Cascade View, Pinehurst Beverly Park, Silver Lake, Twin Creeks, and Westmont, that small sliver that includes 5 people. The core area for the district is Silver Lake. The largest populated neighborhood is Silver Lake. One of the neighborhoods, Silver Lake, is wholly contained. And the district is characterized by a mixture of diverse population, the second highest of the districts. Newest housing structures, got 1986, fairly new out of the bunch. Moderately higher income, that's 68,155. And fairly high percentage that speaks another language in addition to English at 31.44%. And so the rationale for district configuration, District 5 configuration began like the most with the core area of Silver Lake. District 5 added the nearby neighborhood areas of Twin Creeks and Cascade View to the district, and it's compelled to do so due to its landlocked or to not add from Holly. Let me just show you this. Silver Lake is down here. There is really only one way for Silver Lake to go, and that's up north through Cascade View. The only alternative way would be to take areas away from Holly neighborhood over here, and we most likely decide that's not a good thing to do. After the additions of Twin Creeks and Cascade View, the additional population was needed for the district, and so it was decided not to cross over Evergreen Way and the split Evergreen neighborhood to add population. I will go back. Oops. I will go back. Remember at one time we thought, well, we could add population on Evergreen. There was a configuration. It was decided, no, we don't want to do that. Let's use this Evergreen Way as a good demarcation, leave Evergreen wholly intact inside District 3. And so the only other choice we had was to go up north. We didn't, most likely it wouldn't be logical to split over here and split Valley View in District 2. So up north, since this is already most likely split, let's continue to add areas up north for Pinehurst Beverly Park. And so instead of going Evergreen and splitting Evergreen neighborhood, the areas of Pinehurst Beverly Park was added in order to bring District 5's population deviation within an acceptable standard. So precinct 34, 37, and 39 were included in District 5. These precincts have socioeconomic attributes that are reasonably close, not ideal, but reasonably close to District 5's. And the choice is limited since we do not desire to add Evergreen or split Valley View in a non-compact manner. And so that is the description of each of the districts. I have some next steps. I'm really surprised that I finished in 50 minutes or so. That's really good. But I'm interested in any questions that you have. The next steps that I have is to finalize that proposed plan final document. That's the report that will ultimately evolve into a sort of final plan report. It'll have, of course, the background, the plan development process, the district configuration, the district rationale, and the associated appendix maps and the reports like the compactness report and district statistics. And to finalize the proposed slide presentation. And so most likely this presentation, will be modified and finalized to be that slide presentation which reflects what's included in the report in a presentation fashion. So we want to sort of add and modify. So we get one as sort of a presentation, slide presentation, the other more of a detailed report. And then last, we want to begin to present the findings, if we will, and these are the proposed, to the public in August. And so that includes, completing both the documents and the slide presentation. I have a last bullet down here, is whether to drop the Plan A8, or if we modified whatever, A9 or C1 if we go a different route, and use just the proposed final draft as the plan identifier. And so I've seen it both ways. That's up for discussion, whether we use the Plan 8 designator or we just use, this is the proposed final draft as an identifier. And so that's all I had on that aspect. I have the PDFs, if you want to see those as well, have any questions. In the PDFs, I mean the maps to look at anything in more detail. I have the precinct attribute maps as well, so we can look at those. Any questions?
Okay, I have first question.
All right.
Could you spell forest with only one R?
I probably did in some time, in some occasions, but I tried to do two.
That's it.
Is that what it is?
Well, it's all through there. It's all through there with two R's.
Let's see.
To clarify, Tony, forest is just with one R is what he's saying.
Yeah.
I think we have it two R's a couple times in there.
Absolutely. No, I think I have it every time with two R's.
4 R's.
So look, that is an excellent get. And I think somebody told me that. I think it was, I can't remember. Someone told me that. Either Ms. Weber.
I have a comment.
Yes.
I communicated with Nicole who was our project manager after the last meeting on June 22nd, and shared from my perspective that I thought it had been a very productive discussion. Several good questions, good comments. Folks went into detail. I wasn't sure what we would see from you this evening because you do provide a lot of information. I wasn't sure whether you would give us one plan or a couple plans again. But I said that I trusted your judgment. And everyone seems to have been engaged, and I had believed that whatever we had discussed and decided was still preliminary. And with that understanding that it was open to revision, because we are not in a position to final anything like you've said until we have go through 6 public meetings and take public testimony. And I'd ask Nicole to see if we couldn't reinforce that, and you've done that. So thank you for saying that this is not final and that still is preliminary. I even found myself, in full disclosure, kind of assessing some of the information and second guessing 1 or 2 of my leanings involving some of the actions. And so I am really interested in, and now that we have A8 and what everyone is thinking and what their perception is of the plan and what thoughts they might have in terms of some boundary changes or anything they have on their mind. And now that we've seen everything together, I'd like to know what others have on their mind in terms of what we might have missed or what we should be considering. Or I have some of my own, but I'll discuss those at a later date if at the time. But I'm interested in hearing from others on now that they've looked at this.
This is Kari. I appreciate seeing the process, Tony, of how you worked through, how we went through various decisions to get where we were. I think that, and I'll address the public comments, which to me is the elephant in the room, as like I'd like to see the plan split down the line, because to accommodate what they're looking for, and at the same time, there's no way, based on the precincts, to split the city by Broadway. It doesn't work. And so it's very challenging to do what we've done and accommodate everybody and make the fairest plan. I want the fairest plan. I do live in Northwest, full disclosure. And it's hard for me not to get a little, just as a person, because where I live was called out as not relating to the neighborhood on the other side of Broadway. And I'm speaking first because I feel like the best way that we can all get along and actually move forward is to work together. That's where I come from. So I think there's more power in us being united. That may or may not be the case with the public comment as it stands. So the point I'm getting to is that we've heard very vocally from Delta residents, but I want to know from Bayside, and I want to know from Riverside, and I want to know from Lowell. I would like to hear from Ben in Valley View. I'd like to hear more from other parts of the city. Were we on the right track? Everett is a very funky town. There's these weird little lines, and some places are in the city and some are not. North Everett, as a peninsula, is very wholly contained. So it makes it very hard to split it, in my opinion. But I don't want to disregard the comments from Delta. I hear you. I certainly think about it. But at the same time, it was nice to hear the rationale again, coming back to where I started, of why we did the things we did. At the same time, it's like I want the visual just to see it again. And I had to go back and find a map from, I don't know, May or something, when we were tried to split it, and look at it and how far down we had to go. I was talking to a View Ridge resident because they would be in the same district as Northwest if we went with that plan. And it seems like it gets very convoluted very quickly, and yet not. So I'm split myself. I just want to acknowledge that I read them all too. And I want everyone to feel represented. That is huge and key to me. But our city is a very strange how it's laid out. And there's my piece. I'd love to hear also, like Jim said, from other people about where they think the plan is, maybe representing the comments we've heard thus far. And obviously, agenda item 3 is getting into public comments and how we're going to take that. But that's where I stand today.
That's excellent. And because I saw some of the public comments, I actually went back, and I don't know if it's the appropriate time right now, and actually worked up a plan that split Northwest Everett and Delta. And so I can show that to you all now, or we can discuss some other aspects of the plan.
I think it'd be good to see it. This is Simone. I agree, Kari. I think I went back and forth a little bit. I'd mostly been in favor of splitting down Broadway, but I can see there is a case for why you would combine them. But I do remember in our conversation, one of the key reasons why we did want to combine them was compactness. And thinking about compactness versus combining like areas, I would say I would rather have it be less compact and truly combine the most similar areas. And just thinking about what are the priorities of these different areas. Are we really going to create districts that are going to be represented, like fairly represented? And that's kind of where it kind of goes off for me, because Northwest is a very well represented neighborhood. I mean, quite a few electeds come from that neighborhood. Whether we want to put it on a map or not, we know that. So it doesn't really balance out the interests of a neighborhood like Delta in ensuring that they're going to get fair representation going down the line. So I think it's worth looking at.
This is Ben, and I came into this with the trying to get my head around how to make the Delta neighborhood as representative as possible. I did not know that the Delta neighborhood, population-wise, actually is population-wise. I didn't say anything but population-wise is larger than the Northwest neighborhood. I looked at Riverside and areas in Bayside, and I think that when you combine those two, it's going to be a fair conversation, because we're talking about one representative as opposed to 7 representatives or 6 representatives as they have now, or how many ever that they have now in the Northwest neighborhood. Maybe it's 4. And I'm seeing that it doesn't, while everyone is saying that it has to, that representative is probably going to come from the Northwest neighborhood, there is absolutely nothing that says that representative can't come from Riverside and or the Delta neighborhood.
Exactly.
Because they have an opportunity. While I do recognize that the bulk of the majority, with the exception of one, I think, were comments from the folks from the Delta neighborhood. And I just think that having that long, elongated piece down there, we're doing the city a disservice by doing that. I had to really grapple with that from the beginning, because I really do want the Delta neighborhood to have a strong voice. But it is not at the cost of having what I would consider 2 ridiculous maps or 2 ridiculous districts. And I think that those going down there the way that they're split, just as you're showing, Tony, not to say that this would be exactly how it would be. I think that's not a fair districting for all of the rest of the city of Everett.
I'd like to say something here. This is Ethel. I've listened to what Carrie has said, and I've also listened to what Ben has said, and they both make a lot of sense. And Carrie, what you said, coming together, working together is so important. We've got to have some unity here somewhere. You know, we've spent time making this map, putting this map together. And I don't think we can please just one neighborhood, because when you do that, then another neighborhood's going to start screaming, well, what about me? What about me? And here we go back and forth. I think what we need to do is take the plan that we have and look at it, present it to the public. And I guarantee you, when you get out there, everybody's going to have their 2 cents of what they want. But let's face it, we can't please everybody. And I agree with you, Ben. If people want to be there, they can get out and campaign to be there. I honestly believe that there's no way that Northwest would overpower Delta. I think if they're working together, people from the Delta neighborhood can come in there, and if they want to run for an office, run for the office and see what happens. You know, your neighborhood is there and they'll support you.
Thank you for your comment, Ethel. Does anyone else have any other comments or questions as we're looking at this version or anything we're talking about right now?
I'd like to say something. I just want to elaborate that, you know, it is about the people. And I know we had previously said that we were going to kind of ignore incumbency when shaping these. But I don't think that we should necessarily completely ignore the historic divide on areas of representation. If you look at the previous addresses of all the city council members since 1980, they are all along the Bay side of, not the neighborhood, but the Bay side of Everett. So it's not just Northwest that carries the bulk. And while they do have a significant amount, it's really kind of that whole coastal area, the west side of Everett, that consistently has represented Everett on the city council. And if I know it's not about our intent, but about the actual results. So if you're looking at the map that we were considering prior, I feel like it gives way too much weight and power in hindsight looking at the west side of Everett. Because we've had 35 or 36 city council members on the west side of Broadway and Evergreen, where historically we've only had 5 on the east side of Everett since like 1980. And when we're drawing these new districts, we got to be careful about that, not to make the representation worse by incorporating areas into all these districts that have historically seen all that representation. I mean, like, am I being clear on that? Do people understand what I'm saying about like the east side versus the west side?
Yes.
You know, we've been working hard on this project. Just because some people don't agree with what we've done to date doesn't imply that we haven't examined everything real carefully, followed the guidelines and work of the districting master. Because we have.
That's right.
And we've arrived at some preliminary decisions, which we believe at this point provide a good framework to serve Everett. And I thought Ben's comment was very good. You know, we've looked at this before. We've discussed this. Tony, we had 4 or 5 letters. We may have 40 letters before it's done, because there may be folks trying to canvass the area and put pressure on this issue. But
Right.
But we were selected to do the right thing for the citizens of Everett. And if we can't respond every time we get 4 or 5 letters and decide that we're going to revise everything we've done, when we really have examined and done a lot of work to get to this point.
I think what is being asked here, if we're still talking about the emails that came in, is that we make sure that we arrive at a clear understanding as to why and how, so that we can explain it to people. I'm not saying brush it aside. I don't want to brush it aside. In fact, I want to do anything but. And that's one of the reasons that I did want public comment earlier in the process, because they're doing exactly what they're saying that hasn't been allowed in previous, from a historical context, and to allow their voice to be heard. Recognize that their voice is being heard, and let us rationally explain to them why we arrived at the decision that we arrived at. And then we can move from there. If we have to fudge one way or the other, we have to fudge one way or the other. But I do believe that the public is, as has been voiced several times today, we're never going to satisfy everyone. And I look at it, and when you started talking about cutting up Valley View, I was like, yeah, why would you do that? We're getting ready to fall off the mountain anyway, but you're going to talk about cutting us off and splitting our district. But it was, if that was the will of this body, I think I would have lived with it, even though I have a couple of neighbors that probably would have made me move. But that's just the way that it is. So I believe you me, they have come to my house, and they came to my house for other reasons, for about a land dispute. But it is, I think that the people should have definitely their day where they can actually let it out, even though we've heard it before. Listen to it again and try and be as composed and as rational about it and moving forward.
Thanks,
So
Evan. I was going to say, go ahead.
Oh, I was just curious, Tony, what decision do you need from our body today to help you move forward for next week or 2 weeks from now? I'm sorry. Or was today just review and discuss whether or not we want to keep Northwest and Delta combined for next steps?
Well, two separate questions, really. One, what I was looking for is a green light, let's say initially looking for, which was a green light to begin to put together or finalize those two documents. And so this is not necessarily my report, it's the report from the commission. So what I want to do is begin to put together the document that I talked about, sort of that proposed final draft, and then the associated slide presentations and any maps. So a green light to do that for Plan A, and whether we want to call it Plan A or call it something else. So that's number one. Number two is, what do we do with this issue of Northwest Everett that we're revisiting now? Is this an alternative plan?
No.
Do we look at it from that point of view? The only thing that I would interject from my vantage point, which is, if you're looking at Delta and the neighborhoods of concern in Delta, it doesn't change dramatically whether you combine it with Northwest Everett or you combine it with this southern area. Port Gardner may end up being the leading entity for this district configuration and competing out any candidate that Delta would have. Lowell may actually do the same. There's a higher turnout percentage in Lowell that tends to match which Northwest Everett is. So this district configuration isn't necessarily the configuration that would allow Delta to shine. And
So I don't think that that's the end goal, is that we want to make any configuration where one super neighborhood gets to rule their district forever. But, with all due respect, without the background knowledge of the power imbalances that have existed in Everett for a really long time, it's a little bit difficult for you to fully understand kind of what Mary and I are talking about. So, for instance, Delta, Lowell going down, they're going to be more similar. And I think that's the kind of our perspective as the people that are the experts on the community. That's kind of the perspective that we're bringing to the table to say, on paper, this is what it looks like, but in practice and historically, this is what's happened. So that's kind of, I think that might be the little piece that obviously we can't expect you to know because you're not from here, but
right.
That's kind of the crux of the concerns.
Right. And you're exactly right. All I'm looking at are the demographic and socioeconomic attributes. And, there's not that much difference with the demographic and socioeconomic attributes of combining Delta with these areas and combining Delta with this area right here. Specifically, if we added precinct 18, which matches actually Delta a little better, it gets closer to the demographics and socioeconomic attributes of this side that you're talking about. And so looking at that, I don't see that much difference. I mean, if I thought that there was a great deal of difference, I would definitely say so. I don't see a significant amount of difference. Now, that's different than geographically people just aren't getting elected, which I heard. I understand and I appreciate that. There isn't that representation. I'm solely speaking of the socioeconomic aspects of combining it with this area, or the socioeconomic aspects of combining it with this area. Not a great deal of difference from my vantage point.
Yeah, makes sense. Does anyone else have any other further comments on this? I think it seems like we might need to add more time at our next meeting to continue this conversation, just so that we can get to these two communications and the community input here shortly.
Yeah, I have comments, but I can hold them for a future meeting. If we need to move forward on preparing this for the next step, though, do we want to table that and not do that?
I think you should share, Chris.
Okay.
I think you should share your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably kind of reiterating my same thoughts. I feel very good about the plan we've put together. I kind of am a little resentful, I guess, of some of the comments that we haven't followed a good process in general and considered things. I think that we've done a fantastic job. It's a difficult task, and I tend to, if you can zoom out just a little bit for me on the other map, Tony, please. I feel like I tend to look back at the overall picture on this, and I try to keep in mind that with regard to demographics, we have an entire district that's now going to be representing that those socioeconomic factors that are a major concern for the city. And I think districting alone addresses a lot of what's very specifically being discussed with regard to Delta. And as was said before too, I don't think we can make it about one neighborhood. I really find this map concept to be, I would agree with Ben, it's kind of ridiculous to have this long north-south thing. And it's unfortunate because I think there's definitely some valid points that are made, but I feel like overall we are doing a service to the city. I think it's going to be much better. And again, like was said also, there is the opportunity for everyone in the city to run. So I feel good about it. I think we should move forward with it. And I think the next step will definitely engage the public for 2, 3, 4 months potentially. And we can make some changes if there's little things here and there.
Clarification. Are you talking, when you said an area that did not have representation, are you talking about Westmont Holly?
Yeah.
Isn't that where Liz Vogely is?
Yes, it
I
is.
don't know where it is.
Yes, it is.
So,
Yes,
yeah,
it is.
they already have representation currently. But I understand what you're trying to say. But I mean, honestly, if you look for the east and the west side and the numbers I gave you earlier, it's significantly less when you look at the east side and not just Delta, all the way down the line. And when we're looking at, in particular, like the one district, and I'm not discounting the work that we've done. This is in hindsight. That was it, District 2 that kind of favors that runs up to the coastal line there. I seriously question like having that as one of the districts. Yeah, sorry, if you could bring it up, that would be helpful. Just because when I was looking back at like where all of our city council members traditionally lived, I think historically speaking, that's where that side of Port Gardner and Forest Park, that's where the traditional representation came from. It wasn't from Lowell or Valley View or anywhere to the east side of
Or Westmont Holly, Mary?
Or Westmont Holly, yeah.
So just one council member in the last 10 years has been from Westmont Holly, and that's been Liz, right?
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Well, and to be fair, it's only been a couple of years that she's been in there, and now that area is guaranteed a seat in this plan.
You know, I think that, we can go back and forth here as much as we want. And, we could all have a comment about our neighborhoods and stuff like that. I think we've done a great job in working through this thing. We've listened to everybody's comments. And I think for all the comments we received, the majority of them were from the Delta community. So if you begin to show favoritism here, that's like gerrymandering as far as I'm concerned, because you haven't given everybody else a chance to have their part in saying what they want for their neighborhoods. I think we take the plan that we have and proceed with that plan. And then, we take it out to the general public, and then everybody has a chance. We can't favor one neighborhood right here now without giving everybody a chance.
So,
Thank you, Ethel. Julius, did you want to make a comment? Because we haven't heard much from you yet.
No, I just I'm gonna just be repeating what everybody was just saying. So yeah, I guess we should just, I agree with Ben and Ethel and Chris. We would do a disservice if we split the map in half, to the city overall. So I think we should just take this. I don't want to repeat what everybody else is saying. I just agree. I agree.
Okay.
Thank you for thinking of me.
Yeah.
I'd like to say one thing about districting, or one major reason that districting came about, was so that we would have smaller groups of people or smaller areas that could put forth candidates. It's one thing to run a race on 1/5 of the city. It's an entirely different thing when you've got to run a race on the entire city. And so then it becomes really a money thing. And it is very difficult for one person or several people in the impacted areas that we're talking about, to run an at-large race. Whereas in a smaller race, they have a better opportunity to be successful. And I think that's what we're trying to give to all of the city. Anyone that wants to run for public office or be a part of the public has a better opportunity to run once we have the districts themselves, as opposed to the at-large that we are coming out of.
So, Tony, is there any quick vote that we can take that would help you move forward, or do we just need to pin this conversation for the 20th?
I would like to begin looking at or furthering that report and presentation.
Okay.
Under the assumption that we're going to have this, I guess, at least one of the plans. Let's put it that way.
I think we have about 6 commissioners that are pretty comfortable moving forward with the plan as we've created, and then a few hoping we can revisit some other things, and then 2 that would like to look at it deeper. So I think we're still in a majority with moving forward with as is. And as Jim said earlier, nothing that we have done or said is final. And so we will always have the opportunity to come back and undo or redo any of this. We just need to make sure we stay on time so that we have time to actually make changes if we want to. So with that, I'd like to move on to the beautiful communications documents that have been put together by Chris, Simone, and Kari, and some staff. And so I will upload those, and they were in your packets. So hopefully you've had some time to review. Here's the timeline. that we're looking to put forward as a community marketing and communications piece. Did anyone see any issues with that, or errors or wording weird or anything else?
This is Kari. I think from the first version of it, I think it's more clear about where we are in the timeline and the steps. It pops. It's good for me.
Yeah. That's Kelsey. She does a great job. And then these got mixed up when I put the PDFs together. I wish I could take credit for all of her wonderful work, but unfortunately I cannot. So, and then this is the one pager that would be on the, my vision is that we'd have the timeline on the back and then the all the literature on the front. So if there was anything on here that anyone didn't like or didn't agree with, we're definitely open to edits.
I guess we can take that silence as everyone thinks they're amazing and we should move forward with them.
I think so. So these will go as printable,
Hello, can you hear me?
Julius, I think I heard your voice a little bit.
Yes, I have one idea, just a suggestion that we maybe put the date that we hired Tony. So, because did we decide that from that date, that's when we everything was like focused on the core and everything like that?
I mean, on the timeline.
No, I'm looking at the
milestones.
Content. Yeah, the district commission. It's what page is that? It says draft.
We have it on there. Are you talking about on the one pager where it said milestones?
I didn't see milestones. I didn't read that anywhere. It's just right there. I think it's right where it says Tony. Right there, where it says we hired a district. It was just a suggestion.
Right here. You'd like a date there? Easy. Yeah.
Just a suggestion. Just my suggestion. It doesn't. I'm just one man.
It is a really good idea, Julius.
Great, sure, but if not, it's cool.
We're gonna have them. We're gonna have that timeline on the back, so it's gonna be right with there. So we just went kind of like high level on the milestones, and then we went into more of that detail of exactly when we did each thing on the timeline. So we can add that into the milestones if that's what everyone would like to see on there. Otherwise, the timeline's going to be on the back, so it'll have all that on there.
If it's already there, then it's already there, or somewhere else, then it's okay. As long as it's there, as long as it can be found.
Perfect. It'll be right on the back on that timeline.
Okay. Thank you. I'm already thinking of that.
So it'd be November to December, but I can actually add the physical date on there too. I don't think there's anything wrong with more information. So, and plus we've got, like November here and different dates throughout. The next conversation we need to get through is community input. So I'll just go back up to the agenda here. So, we need to decide what the community input process is going to be moving forward. How you would like, right now I'm forwarding you or BCCing you on my response to people who write in. And so, I'm just curious your thoughts, how you'd like to accept public comment moving forward. And keep in mind, we do have 5 public meetings coming up and a 6th at large. So 1 in each district, proposed district, and then 1 at large. So those are on my radar, and I'll be working to put those together when I get back from vacation next week.
Nicole, this is Kari. Very quickly, I did appreciate you sending them as soon as they came in because it was easier for me to actually keep up with them and read them as they appeared. And then I'm glad they were also in the packet so that way everyone can see them.
Right.
And
I
then
agree.
ones we got today or yesterday, those will be included on the next packet. And as you guys all saw, I let people know that they wouldn't be part of the materials for tonight. I had to cut it off at some point so you guys could study and get ready for today.
Right.
I believe
I
that
waited-
the. Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead,
Ben.
Chris. I believe that the one comment that the person made about making it known to the rest of the public as to what the comment was a very good comment. I just think that if the public, while it does not appear that we're going to be able to, because there have been really a lot of fiascos when you try and have a group meeting and have the public come in and voice theirs. I think that it should be written, that those comments should be written, and that, but we should make sure that we somehow or another allow the general public to view those comments so that everyone can hear and see, or perhaps see exactly what others have said, because it helps the process so that we're not trying to stifle a voice that may be coming through.
I have two suggestions for that. One is I could separate out the a different sidebar or a different space on the website that just says public comment, and I could put all the public comment for each meeting there so the community could access them. Another, one of the suggestions that came through, more of a suggestion, I'll just call it that, was that we read them at the beginning of every meeting. I just want to point out that it's 7:31 right now. If we have 10 or 15 comments, our meetings already run 30 plus minutes over. So if we choose to read them at the beginning, that's totally fine. But I just want to make it clear that that will extend the meeting time. And we've already increased our meetings to twice a month. So I feel like staff is asking a lot of your time as volunteers, and I want to be respectful of that. But there are more creative things that we could do with the website to make public comment more clear. Instead of just putting it in the packet, we could draw more attention to it on the website.
Nicole, I agree that we should put it on the website, because then people get to see it and read it for themselves right there. And if they have comments from there, they can send their comments in later. But I think putting it on the website is much better than having us read them during a meeting time.
I agree with Ethel on that. We may consider having an opportunity to address them and having that there if it continues to be something people are sending a lot of things in, because I don't want people to feel like they're just sending things in, nothing's happening. But I do not think we should read through. Some of them were pretty long and lengthy, and that's a big time commitment. So I agree with that.
Negative too. Some of them felt very negative, and I feel like in this time in the world, we need more positivity and less negativity.
I agree.
I agree.
I think Ben pretty clearly stated what I was going to say as well. Just that I think that we do definitely need to have that continue. I thought that was a great way to do it. It should probably be written. I do. One of the letters really addressed that we're not doing a good enough job of advertising this, both in terms of that we are interested in public comment, as well as making sure that people know how and when and where to go to find information in general. So I think we can clearly do a better job at that, and we could brainstorm on ways to present that. So people are it's easy and welcoming for them.
I feel a little defensive over that personally, because I put everything on one landing page, every meeting materials, my email address, my phone number. All you have to do is put districting in the search bar on the website, and you have an entire comprehensive page. Our commissioners now put together these beautiful communication pieces well before we're even starting our public meeting process. So people can bring these to their community meetings now. But we do have the ability to put this on Facebook Live if we choose. That's something I could easily orchestrate. Pipa volunteered a couple weeks ago to figure out how to make that happen, and she's run some tests, and it seems like it could easily work. All of these meetings are on YouTube as well. So I think that we've done a decent job, at least, of putting information out there and making it easy to find in one place on the website. Plus, I am accessible. The community has my personal cell phone number for the most part, honestly. So I'm unsure why people don't feel like they can find the information.
I should be clear too. Hang on. So Nicole, what I meant by that isn't that the city website itself was poorly done in any way. It was really that I don't think people know to even go there. So I think we need to get, as you mentioned earlier, be more creative in other avenues to make people aware in general that may not go to the city website regularly.
Okay, I can dig that.
And I think we should do the Facebook Live thing. I think that looking at things that Mayor Franklin's done and other electeds with using Facebook Live, it's a good way to reach a lot of people that otherwise might not participate or even know what we're doing. And I just think in terms of accessibility, adding more options for people to be able to watch this live or watch it later, I mean, it's only going to be better. It's only going to snag more people into getting involved in being aware of what we're doing.
And starting on the 20th, these will also go live on YouTube as well, so people can have a easier time watching them from their mobile device as well.
So Nicole, I think you did a good job with this, and I appreciate that. And when you look at the comments that we've gotten, people are getting information from somewhere to make the comments they've made. So I think people can find what they want to find if they really want to do it.
But I also think that it's our job as a commission, and Nicole is doing a good job of it, but anything that we can do to be more accessible and to make the information easier to find, it's only going to benefit us in the long run. So whatever we can do, any ideas that people come up with on how we can continue to push this information out in different ways, I think we should be open to it, as opposed to just saying that what we're doing right now is good enough. I think we should continue to keep trying to find new ways to get this information out there.
I agree with that. And I think that everybody knows that I have a very dry sense of humor. And so I took great pleasure in reading the one comment about how we stumbled into getting it right for Westmont Holly. I thought that was just, I almost fell out of my chair when I read it. Of course, that's me and my dry sense of humor, where I know that the person was very serious with what they were saying, but I just thought, yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. We every now, even what is that Texas colloquial saying? Even a javelina hog will root up an acre every now and then. So.
This is Kari. I just want to say kudos to Pipa, because I know she has been trying to get things on Facebook Live with the city, and she's amazing with our text. So thank you very much.
Yes,
I wholeheartedly agree with Facebook Live. That would be great for YouTube Live. I just remember a comment, and I had a conversation with Mayor Franklin many months ago, well before COVID hit, that realistically the communications is the responsibility of this body. It's not the city's. This isn't the city's process. We are being helped by the city. So I think now that we have something to kind of say, that it's nice that we have a professional piece done by city staff. Thank you. And the timeline and where we're going. And there will be time for public comments and to have that people really be able to speak their voice. So I agree. We need to be better at it. I think we've been stumbling through, I'll just use that, what Ben said, but to get where we are through a methodical process that has taken a lot of time. So all of us as a group are as cohesive as we can be. Now that we're staring at each other through a screen, I mean, the whole thing has been turned upside its head. We're doing what we can. We can do better. And I appreciate that comment. We're getting there. And for the press, I think that was brought up in there too. Perhaps it's a reach out from Simone to the press. I guess
done press releases on the districting process and commission. They just haven't been picked up at all. So
Well, that's what I'm saying,
But
is
we
maybe
have
we're
done-
not interesting enough for them to pick it up. So what can we do that will be interesting enough for them to pick it up?
How do we spice this commission up? I don't know.
Right.
Well, the splitting Delta down the middle, or it's not, but splitting down Broadway versus the Northwest Delta combination, I think probably might be something worth picking up. So if there's anybody interested in writing about where we're at now, that could go to our, if someone can write a draft, the communications team can brand it, clean it up, edit it, and launch it out. It just needs to be, neutral. So, but I think it's spicy.
So
I feel
what is the plan? What is the plan for the next meeting? The 22nd. What are we going to do?
Well,
Tony, that's a good question.
yeah, I'll chime in. What I planned on doing, this is regardless of the Northwest Everett and Delta, was to come back to you all with updated products, updated report on Plan A8, and updated presentation that would be presented as the proposed final draft. And so that's what we're moving toward. Again, this is without any aspect of the Northwest Everett Delta situation.
I concur with your plans to come back next meeting with A8. Let's stay on course.
Do we need a motion for that?
No, I don't think so. And I'm also going to bring back a plan, or at least probably not a full plan because I'm going on vacation this week, but I'm going to bring back a draft plan of how I suggest we run the meetings for our 5, 1 in each proposed district and 1 at-large meetings, given the COVID and our legal obligation to hold them in person. So I'm going to come back with at least a rough idea of what I'm thinking so that you guys can provide input and hopefully help me troubleshoot some of the issues I run into.
I think that's really important, and I'm glad you volunteered to do that because, I find it very interesting that the 9 or 8 comments that we got came from one neighborhood. We have got to figure out how we're going to communicate this broad enough to get general feedback, and then I really want to understand how and the process to go to the 5 districts and get their feedback, their final feedback. So that part is really kind of mushy to me as to how we're going to go about doing that. And so I'd rather see that within the next 2 weeks than be continuing to worry about, gosh, my friends in Port Gardner, they haven't seen anything, other than the people that I, touch on a daily basis.
And this is Flora from legal. We have, you might remember Ramsey Ramberman. He is also in the legal department, and he gave information to you about the Open Public Meetings Act and some of the processes with that when you first started up as a district and commission. And he did offer to come back when it seems like the right time to give information again and to talk about the public meetings and some of the Open Public Meetings Act obligations that we're going to have now that we're going to have the public forums. So I don't know if next time would be appropriate or the time after, but he did offer to come do that if you're interested in having his information.
He could probably write it in a memo for us, Flora.
Sure, whatever's easier.
I think that'd be a real value because when he offered to do that was pre-COVID. And we're kind of looking at a different world now. And so that's the part that really has me bothered is I'm trying to not take some of the emails that we got personally, but trying to figure out how we can do a better job of disseminating this information and then getting quality feedback back.
Okay,
And
well, I'll see if.
we need some help.
Would you rather have something in writing from him?
I think having him here so we can ask some questions would be good.
I think both. I think an official memo and having him available. But it'd be great if we could get some kind of a memo ahead of when he would be on so that we would have that information available and then we'd know if we have questions. Because sometimes it's hard when new information comes out in the meeting to know what kind of questions we're going to have.
So we'll invite him to the 20th and the 3rd, and then he can tell us based on his schedule what meeting he can attend. And in the meantime, Flora will work with him to get a memo so that at least you can start reviewing the information on the 20th.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Flora. Great suggestion.
So Chris asked about a motion, and Tony had said he was going to bring back A8. And that would be the focus of the agenda at our next meeting. Just want to make certain, Tony, that is that's the plan. That's the direction we're proceeding with. Is that correct?
That's what I have planned on doing.
Okay, thank you.
And then just circling back, for our community input, we're talking about allowing people to continue to email into Nicole. Those emails will continue to be forwarded to us as she receives them, and then they'll be included in our packet. And then any other kind of input that we decide we want to do down the line, we can do. But for now, we're going to stick with doing it how we did it for this meeting. You're on mute, Nicole.
I'm going to create a tab on the website.
Oh, and we're going to put it online.
Just for public comment. Yeah. I'll have, someone who's a website person help me see if there's some creative way to do it that opens like something better than a PDF where everything is just like copied and pasted in there. I'll see if I can make it a little prettier and easier to read, but that's the plan.
Can I suggest maybe we have a line item in our agenda where we give an opportunity for any of the commissioners to review or elaborate or comment on any of the comments that came in? So for instance, if we wanted to address their frustration about the communication we've had, that we can bring that up, or if there was any valid points, just so that people who are giving public comment feel like their voices are being heard. And then that holds us accountable as far as responding to them or choosing not to.
I think that's a good idea. I think we could kick off our meeting with that, just going through, giving everyone the opportunity if they want to comment on anything. I think that's a really good idea.
Flora, can you tell us, so I've been responding to the community, just thank you, we received it, the commission has received your email essentially, or providing information if it's depending on the content of the email. Curious what the rule is for commissioners to reply as long as they're CCing me. Is that I don't know, it's a best idea, but it's an idea. Curious how that falls.
I think that's a bad idea. I would, because of the Open Public Meetings Act, email is just so sticky because it's really easy to go wrong with the OPMA with emails. And so my preference, in order to keep any hint of any violation from happening, would be for the commissioners to respond at the next meeting where all of you are there and all of you can hear each other and talk to each other, and also where all of the public can hear you as well.
I agree.
Great. That answers that.
Thank you.
Alrighty, we had
any other
time on there
discussion
for
items
discussion. Yeah.
Was there a motion to adjourn?
Not yet.
Ah.
But if no one has any discussion items, I think I can do it. I move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All
Bye.
opposed? Bye.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.